My name is Marcus Kelly. I'm 43, and if you met me last year, you wouldn't have recognized the man I've become. They say men like me don't talk much about Pain Steel Mill boys from Ohio, taught to fix, to muscle through, to never let anyone see you bleed. For years, I lived by those rules, until the world I'd built crumbled, and all I could do was watch. I was born and raised in Corwin, a small town outside Cleveland, with more potholes than stoplights. My father worked the lines at the old Ford plant. My mom worked nights at the hospital. We weren't poor, exactly, but things were always tight. I was the eldest of 3 brothers, the one expected to set the example. I worked after school at the hardware store, saved up for a used truck, and went to community college on a football scholarship that barely lasted 2 years before my knee gave out. I dropped out, started full-time at the steel mill, and never looked back. That was the pattern known foot after the other. Do what you're supposed to do. I met Rachel at a friend's barbecue, back when we were both 23, and thought we could take on the world. She had big brown eyes and a smile that made you feel seen. We got married a year later, moved into a little rented house by the river, and eventually scraped enough together for a mortgage on a small place on Rosewood Lane. It was nothing fancy, but it was ours. We painted the kitchen yellow and called it home. When our daughter Ellie was born, everything changed. I'd never felt so terrified or so proud. The first time I held her tiny fingers, eyes wide with surprise at the world, I promised her I'd always keep her safe. I meant it. But life has a way of testing promises, and mine didn't survive the storm. Rachel struggled after Ellie was born. At first it was just the blues, or so the doctors said. I took more shifts so she could rest, but the sadness never left. She stopped seeing her friends, started skipping meals, and then the drinking began. Wine with dinner, then wine without dinner, then bottles hidden around the house. I tried talking to her. I tried getting her help, but I couldn't reach her, no matter what I did. She pulled away, and the harder I tried, the more distant she became. When Ellie was 5, Rachel lost her job at the salon. She started blaming me, blaming the town, blaming everything but the bottle. I became an expert at walking on eggshells. Most days I'd come home and find Rachel passed out on the couch, with the television blaring and Ellie playing quietly in her room. I shielded Ellie as best I could, never letting her see how scared I really was. I'll never forget the night I realized things had gone too far. I was on night shift at the mill when my phone rang a neighbor, Mrs. Donovan, saying Ellie was at her house, shaking and crying, saying her mommy was yelling and throwing things. I drove home in a panic, found Rachel slumped on the kitchen floor, the smell of vodka thick in the air. Ellie sat on the porch steps, knees hugged to her chest, staring at the street lights. That was the first time I called the police. The first time, but not the last. The next few months were a blur: counselors, social workers, family court. I tried to keep us together. Rachel swore she'd get better, but the cycle always repeated. Ellie started flinching at loud noises. I caught her once stuffing towels under her bedroom door to drown out the sound of Rachel screaming at the television. One night, Rachel threw a glass at the wall when Ellie asked for help with her homework. I packed a bag for Ellie and drove to my mom's apartment across town. Just for the night, I told her. But we both knew it was more than that. That was the last straw. Child Protective Services opened a case file. I was asked hard questions by people who didn't know us, didn't know the long years I'd spent holding everything together. Why didn't you leave sooner? They asked. I had no good answer. Maybe it was pride, or shame, or just the stubborn hope that tomorrow would be better. Rachel left town not long after. I heard rumors she'd gone south, maybe to stay with her cousin in Kentucky. I got the house, the mortgage, the debt, and every morning I woke up hoping it had all been a bad dream. Ellie was placed with a foster family. Temporarily, they said, but I saw her only on supervised visits at the county office. Each time she asked, "When can I come home, Daddy?" And each time, my heart broke a little more. Then the steel mill closed, one of those global market stories that always make the news. Overnight, 200 of us lost our jobs. I applied everywhere: factories, warehouses, even a security job at the mall, but work was scarce, and the bills piled up. I spent my days fixing things around the house that didn't need fixing, just to stay busy. The silence in Ellie's room was the worst. Her drawings were still pinned to the corkboard, a crooked family portrait in purple crayon. Some nights I'd sit on her bed, listening to the house settle, and pray for a second chance. It was Reggie who finally pulled me out of the fog. He was an old friend from high school, now running a community center in Cleveland. "Come help out," he said. "You need to get out of that house." I resisted at first, but one morning I found myself standing in the center's parking lot, coffee in hand, feeling more lost than I'd ever been. That first day, I swept floors, fixed leaky sinks, changed light bulbs. It was nothing heroic. But being around other people, Reggie, the kids who showed up after school, the tired mothers with nowhere else to go, reminded me of something I'd forgotten. You can't fix everything alone. Weeks passed, and I started to feel a little stronger. I made friends with a quiet kid named Luis, who came by every afternoon to tinker with bikes in the workshop. He reminded me of myself at 12, shy, stubborn, and smart as hell. There was an older man named Doc, a retired teacher who ran the after-school reading club, always telling stories and giving away candy. Evenings, the center filled with laughter, music, and the smell of chili simmering in the kitchen. It wasn't home, not yet, but it felt like a place where people mattered. One night, after the center closed, I sat in the empty gym, staring up at the flickering exit sign, and realized that the life I'd lost wasn't coming back. But maybe, just maybe, I could build something new. And so began my second act. Not as the man I used to be, but as someone learning, day by day. That family isn't just about blood. Sometimes, it's about who stands by you when the world falls apart. It's strange how quickly a routine can build itself out of chaos. After a few months volunteering at the community center, I became a fixture there, the handyman, as Reggie called me, though some of the kids started calling me Coach. Even though I hadn't taught anyone how to throw a football in years, it didn't matter. What mattered was having something to wake up for each morning. By October, the air had gone crisp and gray. I started showing up early, unlocking the front door before sunrise. Some days, Luis would already be waiting, hands stuffed deep in his jacket pockets, eyes fixed on the cracked pavement, as if daring the world to give him trouble. He didn't talk much about home, but the bruises on his arms and the way he flinched at sudden noises told a story I recognized all too well. One morning, as we were patching a flat tire on an old BMX, Luis finally spoke up. You ever feel like you're just waiting for things to get better, but they never do? I hesitated. Honesty is a gift you give to people who need it, even when it hurts. Yeah, kid, I said, more times than I can count. Luis nodded, as if that settled something deep inside him. The other kids trickled in, one by one. Nia, who was quick with a joke and quicker to defend anyone she thought was being picked on. Jerome, whose father was in prison and whose mother worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on. And Samantha, who hid behind her sketchbook, drawing monsters and angels in equal measure. Sometimes, I'd sit at the workshop table with them, letting the sawdust and chatter fill the spaces in my mind that used to ache for Ellie. Weekends brought more people. Reggie started a Saturday breakfast, program-free pancakes and scrambled eggs for anyone who needed a meal. At first, it was just a handful of regulars, but word spread fast. Soon the gym was filled with families, old folks, and kids who looked like they hadn't smiled in weeks. I manned the griddle, flipping pancakes, joking about my lack of culinary skills. Sometimes, I'd catch a glimpse of myself in the stainless steel hood hair flecked with flour, smile cracked, but genuine, and wonder if this was what redemption looked like. But every day, when the laughter faded and the building emptied out, I'd find myself staring at my phone, scrolling through old photos of Ellie. There she was at the zoo, grinning beside a goat. There in the backyard, face smeared with birthday cake. There asleep on the couch, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. My daughter, my light. I called her foster family once a week, checking in, asking after her grades, her health, her moods. The social worker said, "You're making progress, Mr. Kelly. Keep showing up. Keep doing the work." But the wait was agony. One afternoon, Reggie found me fixing a leaky faucet in the locker room. "You ever think about going back to school?" he asked, wiping his hands on his jeans. I looked up, confused. "What for?" "We need someone to run the after-school program. The grants come through, but I need a licensed counselor. You got the credits from college, right?" "Half a degree and a blown-out knee," I joked. He didn't laugh. "You're good with the kids, Marcus. They trust you. That means something." I didn't answer, but the idea stuck with me. That night, I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by piles of unopened mail, and filled out the first application I'd touched in years. Just seeing my name typed out in a new way, Marcus Kelly, applicant, student, was enough to make something flicker inside me. Hope, maybe. A week later, Luis showed up at the center with a split lip. I pulled him aside, gave him an ice pack, and waited for him to talk. He didn't. But as he stood in the corner silent, I remembered all the times I'd sat in Ellie's room, helpless, wanting so badly to protect her from a world that didn't care if she got hurt. Listen, kid, I said softly. You don't have to say anything. But if you ever need a place to go, a safe place, this door is always open. He nodded, eyes brimming with a pain I knew too well. The center wasn't just a building, it was a shelter, a home, a sanctuary for lost souls. I saw myself in those kids, saw the wounds life carved into them before they had a chance to heal. But I also saw resilience, the stubborn spark that refused to go out, no matter how strong the wind. It was late October when the call finally came. Mr. Kelly, this is Miss Jensen from Social Services. We need to discuss Ellie's case. My hands shook as I gripped the phone, heart pounding. Is she okay? She's fine, but her foster family is moving out of state. We're reviewing her placement options. I need to know, are you willing to be considered for full custody? For a second, I couldn't breathe. All the memories of failure, of fear, of letting her down rushed in like a tidal wave. But then I remembered Reggie's words, the kids' trust, the pancakes and laughter. Yes, I said. Yes, I'm willing. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, interviews, home inspections. I scrubbed the house from top to bottom, fixed the fence, painted Ellie's room the shade of lavender she'd loved as a toddler. Each night, I lay awake, imagining what it would be like to have her home again. Sometimes, fear would creep in. What if I wasn't enough? What if I failed her again? But then I'd remember the way Luis smiled when I handed him the wrench, or how Nia joked about my lopsided pancakes, and I'd tell myself that healing isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. Thanksgiving arrived, and the center was bustling with preparations for the annual feast. I volunteered to roast turkeys in the center's battered old oven. As the smell of sage and butter filled the air, I watched the kids set the tables, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Doc read a poem, Reggie made a speech about community, and Luisa and Luis stood up and thanked everyone for not giving up on people who make mistakes. I sat at the end of the table, looking out over the sea of faces, and felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. That night, as I locked up, my phone buzzed. A message from Miss Jensen. Final interview scheduled for Monday. Ellie is excited to see you. I slumped against the door, the cold November wind stinging my cheeks, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe. Maybe the worst was behind us. Maybe, just maybe, we were finally coming home. I don't know how people survive waiting. There's a particular kind of agony in not knowing what the next sunrise might bring, whether it will hold the thing you've prayed for, or another empty space at the kitchen table. Over the weekend, I scrubbed the house again, rearranged the living room furniture 3 different times, and stood outside in the biting wind, painting the fence until my knuckles ached. Anything to keep my mind busy. Anything to silence the question, will I be enough for her? Monday came, gray and drizzling. At 8 sharp, Miss Jensen arrived with Ellie. I saw them through the window, Ellie, clutching a worn backpack, eyes wide as she studied the porch, the mailbox, the wreath I'd hung lopsided on the door. I opened up before they could knock. "He, Dad." Her voice was soft, careful. I almost didn't recognize it. But the face still Ellie, though older, her hair longer, eyes wary, and older than any 9-year-old should be. "Hey, Elle," I managed, my own voice shaking. Miss Jensen gave us a moment, stepping into the kitchen to review paperwork. "You painted my room," Ellie said, peeking down the hallway. "Lavender," I answered. "Like you wanted." She nodded, a smile flickering, then vanishing as quickly as it came. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I used to braid her hair before school. The silence stretched between us. "I'm sorry," I said at last, voice raw. "For everything. For leaving. For not fighting harder to keep you." She didn't meet my eyes. Instead, she traced the edge of the table with her finger. "Mom said you weren't coming back." I swallowed. She was wrong. I wanted to. I got lost for a while. But I'm here now, and I want you home. If you'll have me. Ellie shrugged. "I have a hamster at Mrs. Geller's house." The absurdity of it, the hamster, the custody battle, the lost years nearly undid me. But I smiled. "We can get you a hamster here. Or 2. Heck, you want a dog?" Ellie's mouth twitched. "Dogs are messy." I laughed, feeling the first crack of light break through. Miss Jensen returned with a thick folder. "Ellie, why don't you show me your room?" She led Ellie down the hall. I heard the low murmur of their voices, Ellie's soft at first, then louder as she described the paint color, the way I'd hung her drawings on the wall. "Miss." Jensen nodded, jotting notes. Eventually they returned. "Mr. Kelly, I need to ask a few questions, Miss Jensen said. I steeled myself. Have you maintained sobriety? Yes, I've been in counseling, weekly meetings. I have letters from my sponsor and my employer at the center. She nodded, flipping through her forms. Do you feel ready to parent again? The question stung, not because it was unfair, but because it was necessary. Yes, I've worked hard for this. For her. Miss? Jensen looked at Ellie. Do you want to live here, Ellie? Ellie looked at me, then at her hands. For a long time, the kitchen was silent but for the ticking of the wall clock. Finally, she nodded. Yes, I want to try. A simple sentence, but it felt like a door opening in a locked house. The rest of the day was a blur. Miss Jensen went over safety plans, numbers for the crisis line, schedules for in-home visits. When she finally left, Ellie and I stood awkwardly in the living room, both unsure of what to do next. You hungry? I asked. She shrugged. I rummaged in the fridge, found eggs, bread, a half pint of strawberries. How about French toast? She nodded. We cooked together, just like before, Ellie cracking eggs with surgical precision, wrinkling her nose at the cinnamon. When we sat to eat, she spoke quietly. Is it okay if I call Mrs. Geller? She'll worry. Of course. I dialed the number, handed her the phone. She talked for a few minutes, voice gaining strength. When she hung up, I noticed she was smiling. That night, after Ellie fell asleep in her freshly made bed, I sat on the floor outside her room, my back against the wall. I listened to her breathing, the soft hum of the city outside, and let myself hope. Hope that I wouldn't screw this up. Hope that she'd forgive me for the years I lost. But nothing is ever that easy. The next day, I returned to the center. Reggie slapped me on the back. You look like a man who just won the lottery. I grinned. I got my daughter back. Reggie smiled, but his eyes were serious. It's just the first step, brother. Be patient with her, and with yourself. I split my days between work and home. Ellie started school at the local elementary, riding the bus, making friends, coming home with stories about her teachers and the mean lunch lady who smells like tuna fish. Some nights she cried. Some nights she was angry, slamming doors, screaming that I didn't understand. She was right. I didn't, not fully. But I listened. I told her it was okay to be mad, to miss her mom, to wish things were different. Sometimes she let me hold her. Sometimes she didn't. One night, after a particularly rough day, I found her curled up in the armchair, knees hugged to her chest. Are you scared I'll leave again? I asked. She looked up, her eyes red. Yes. I knelt in front of her, hands shaking. I'm not going anywhere, Elle. Not ever again. I promise. Time passed, and bit by bit, our life found a new rhythm. Weekends at the center, evenings spent doing homework, late-night runs for ice cream. Slowly, the walls she'd built began to come down. But then, trouble found us again, like it always does. It started with a phone call from Ellie's teacher. There's been a situation at school, she said, her voice tight. I rushed to the office. Ellie sat with her head down, cheeks wet with tears. She hit another student, the principal said, pushed him down on the playground. I knelt beside her. What happened? She wouldn't speak, just shook her head. On the walk home, I tried not to let my frustration show. Talk to me, Elle. Finally, her voice broke. He called me a foster kid. He said you only took me back because you had to. My heart broke a little more. I crouched to her level, put my hands on her shoulders. Ellie, you're not here because I have to. You're here because I want you, because I love you. She cried in my arms, her whole body shaking. That night, after she went to sleep, I called my sponsor. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. He laughed. None of us do. You just keep showing up. That's what matters. The next morning, Ellie left a note on the kitchen table. Sorry for yesterday. Thanks for not giving up on me. I pinned it to the fridge, right next to her first crayon drawing the one with the sun and two stick figures holding hands. Through everything, I kept reminding myself, home isn't a place. It's a promise you keep, every day, for the people you love. But as the holidays approached, and Ellie began to settle in, a shadow lingered at the edge of our new life. A reminder that, no matter how hard you fight, the past has a way of finding you, and I was about to learn just how far I'd have to go to keep my promise. By Thanksgiving, Ellie and I had settled into a fragile peace. I'd become a regular at her school, showing up for parent-teacher meetings, band concerts, and the odd disciplinary talk. She was slowly making friends. Her nightmares, though less frequent, still came sometimes with her calling out for her mom, sometimes just wordless sobs that broke my heart. I did what I could, held her, made cocoa, sat beside her in the dark. That's what being a parent is. I was learning not having the right answers, but never walking away from the pain. The holidays brought their own special blend of joy and dread. It was the first Christmas we'd spend together in 4 years. I wanted it to be perfect. I hung lights, baked cookies, badly. Even bought a real pine tree, something Ellie had always wanted. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine sap, which only made me realize how much I'd missed these little traditions. We were stringing popcorn for the tree one Saturday morning when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, expecting a neighbor or maybe Miss Jensen from Child Services. Instead, I found my younger brother, Alex, standing on the porch with his suitcase. "Can I come in?" he asked, sheepish. I let him in, wary. Alex and I weren't close. He'd taken off after high school, traveling the country for construction gigs, popping up at family events just long enough to remind everyone he was alive. He hadn't called since Mom died. Still, I couldn't turn him away, not with Ellie watching from the stairs. "I was in town," Alex said, dropping his bag by the door. "Figured I'd see how you're doing." We made awkward small talk. Alex had never been great with kids, but he tried asking Ellie about her school, her favorite movies. She answered in monosyllables, her eyes darting between us. After lunch, Alex pulled me aside in the garage. "She's gotten big," he said. "Yeah, she's been through a lot." He nodded, looking uncomfortable. "I'm not here to cause trouble, Marcus, but I heard some things about Tina." My stomach clenched. "What about her?" "She's been asking around, says you're unstable, says you shouldn't have custody." I felt the old panic rise in my chest. "How do you know?" "Ran into her in Yakima, at a bar. She was with some guy lawyer type. She asked me about you, about Ellie, about whether you were drinking again." I swore under my breath. Of course Tina would try something now, when things were finally settling. I thought about the court order, the one granting me full custody, contingent on continued sobriety and no criminal activity. One slip, one accusation, and everything could fall apart. "Did you tell her anything?" Alex shook his head. "Told her I hadn't seen you in months. Didn't mention the center, but she's determined, Marcus. She wants Ellie back." I didn't sleep that night. I watched Ellie dreaming, the faint rise and fall of her chest in the moonlight, and wondered how I'd survive if she was taken from me again. The next week, strange things started happening. First, an anonymous call to the center, reporting me for smelling like alcohol at work. The director, Mr. Collins, called me into his office. He was kind, but firm. "Marcus, you know we have to take every report seriously. I need you to do a breathalyzer. Right now." My hands shook as I blew into the device. 0.0. Mr. Collins smiled, relieved. "I figured, but we have to be careful. There are people out there who'd love to see you fail." After that, I started noticing a car parked across from our house at odd hours. A blue sedan, plates I didn't recognize. Once, I caught a glimpse of someone taking photos long lens, pointed straight at our living room window. I called my sponsor, Greg, in a panic. "They're watching me, waiting for me to screw up." He listened, then said, "Marcus, fear's their weapon. Don't hand it to them. Stick to the truth. Document everything." So I did. I kept a notebook, logging every weird occurrence, the phone calls, the car, even the time someone rifled through our mailbox and left it hanging open. One afternoon, Miss Jensen showed up unannounced, clipboard in hand. She checked the fridge, Ellie's room, the medicine cabinet. "I got a call, Marcus," she said, not unkindly. "A report that you'd been yelling at Ellie, that the house was dirty, that she was scared." I felt my throat close up. "None of that's true." She gave me a look that was more sad than accusatory. "I know, but I have to follow up. Ellie, you come here a moment." Ellie came into the kitchen, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Has your dad ever yelled at you, scared you, or hit you?" Ellie shook her head. "He just makes bad eggs." Miss Jensen cracked a smile, made her notes, and left. Still, the shadow lingered. Every time the phone rang, every time Ellie had a bad dream, I wondered if Tina was behind it, pulling strings from afar. Christmas morning arrived, cold and bright. I found Ellie already awake, sitting cross-legged by the tree, waiting for me. "Can I open one now?" she asked. I nodded, settling beside her. She picked a small box, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a bracelet handmade, woven with beads and the letters DAD. I'd made it at the center's craft night, feeling foolish, but hoping she'd like it. She slipped it on, looked at me shyly. Thanks, Dad. We spent the day eating pancakes, watching old movies, and sledding in the park. For a moment, I let myself believe we were safe. But that night, as I took out the trash, I saw the blue sedan again. The window rolled down. A man leaned out, snapping a photo. I strode across the street, anger flaring. Hey, what do you want? He just smiled, started the car, and drove away. When I got back inside, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. Ellie stood in the hallway watching me. Who was that? No one. I lied, forcing a smile. Just someone lost. But in my gut, I knew. The past wasn't done with us yet. Tina was coming. And this time, she wasn't going to play fair. Over the next week, the pressure mounted. More anonymous calls, more visits from Miss Jensen, more sleepless nights. Ellie grew quieter, withdrawing into herself. She started biting her nails, something she hadn't done since she was little. Finally, one Friday evening, the doorbell rang. It was Miss Jensen, clipboard clutched tight, face grim. I need to talk to both of you, she said, stepping inside. Ellie sat on the couch, her face pale. There's been a new motion filed in family court, Miss Jensen began. Your mother is petitioning for custody. She claims Marcus is unfit, that the home environment is unsafe. I felt the room spin. That's not true. I've done everything you asked. She held up a hand. I know, Marcus. I believe you. But the court process is starting again. There will be hearings, home studies, interviews. Ellie started to cry, soft at first, then louder, until she was sobbing in my arms. I held her, heartbreaking, promising her that I would never let her go. After Miss Jensen left, I tucked Ellie into bed, singing her the lullaby my mother used to sing to me. Then I sat on the porch, head in my hands, staring out into the cold winter night. How do you fight a past that won't stay buried? How do you protect your child when the world wants to believe the worst about you? I didn't have the answers. All I had was the promise I'd made to never leave, to never give up. And as the snow began to fall, silent and relentless, I swore to myself I'd keep fighting. For Ellie, for our future, for the home we were trying so desperately to build together. The family courtroom on a January morning is colder than any street in Spokane. The heat barely works. The light is pale. Everyone speaks in whispers, as if afraid of waking a sleeping bear. The judge sits high on the bench, ancient and severe, with reading glasses that hang low on his nose. I sit with my lawyer, a public defender named Riley, young, sharp, and trying his best to hide his nerves. Ellie sits beside me, twisting her bracelet, cheeks blotched from crying. On the other side of the room, Tina is radiant as ever, her hair perfect, clothes pressed, not a wrinkle in sight. Beside her is a suited man with gold cufflinks, her attorney, Mr. Trask. Tina keeps glancing at me, a small, tight smile on her lips. It's the smile she wore on the day she served me divorce papers. I try not to look, but I can feel the weight of her stare. The judge calls the hearing to order. Trask stands. He's smooth, confident, the kind of man who's made a career out of exploiting second chances. Your Honor, my client has grave concerns regarding the welfare of her daughter. She alleges that Mr. Kelly is unstable, that he has a documented history of substance abuse and emotional outbursts, and that his home is unsafe for a minor child. My lawyer stands. Your Honor, my client has maintained over 2 years of continuous sobriety. He is employed, has stable housing, and all reports from Child Protective Services have been favorable. We request that the court grant Ellie's wishes to remain with her father. The judge nods. I want to hear from the child. Ellie's hands are shaking as she takes the stand. She answers the judge's questions with small, careful words. I want to stay with my dad. He's good to me. He tries really hard. I feel safe. Tina's attorney leans forward. Ellie, did you ever feel afraid in your father's care? She shakes her head, but her eyes fill with tears. Trask doesn't let up. But isn't it true your father has had angry outbursts? Ellie nods slightly. Sometimes he gets upset, but he doesn't hurt me. He never has. I want to rush to her, but I know I can't. The judge's face is unreadable. Tina takes the stand. She weeps, recounting stories, some true, some twisted, about my drinking, about nights I forgot to call, about a birthday I missed when I was in rehab. She doesn't mention the shouting matches we had in the old apartment, or how she used to disappear for days, leaving Ellie with crackers and a list of emergency numbers. Her lawyer paints her as the long-suffering mother, doing whatever it takes for her child. Then it's my turn. I'm sworn in. I tell the truth. How I failed. How I got sober. How I fought my way back for Ellie. I explain our routines, her therapy, the help from my brother and my sponsor, and the regular home visits from Miss Jensen. I admit my mistakes, but I do not run from them. Trask tries to trip me up. Mr. Kelly, isn't it true you once left Ellie alone while you were out at an AA meeting? Yes, she was 12. I called her every 15 minutes. She was safe. Is that responsible parenting? It's not ideal, I admit, but I'm not perfect. I'm just trying my best. Tina's face is streaked with tears. He's going to ruin her life, Your Honor. He's not well. He's never been well. The judge listens. He asks for the Child Protective Services report. Miss Jensen, the caseworker, reads her findings. Ellie is well cared for. The home is clean. There is no evidence of abuse. She's bonded to her father. She wants to stay. Tina's face crumples. For a moment, I see not an enemy, but a woman as afraid of losing her child as I am. The judge calls a recess. My lawyer leans in. You did well. It'll come down to the reports and Ellie's wishes. We wait in the hallway. Alex calls to check on me, promising he'll be in the gallery when the decision comes. Miss Jensen brings Ellie a juice box and sits with her, talking quietly. As I sit there, the anxiety becomes a physical ache. I think of every time I let Ellie down, every mistake I made that Tina can now use as ammunition. But I also think of every night I stayed up with her nightmares, every school project, every home-cooked meal, every small joke that made her laugh. I have been present. I have changed. Back in the courtroom, the judge asks if there's anything else to be said. Tina's lawyer stands. Your Honor, my client has new evidence. He presents a stack of photographs. Me taking out the trash late at night. Me in the backyard looking angry. Me standing on the porch in my robe. He claims these prove erratic behavior, possibly under the influence. I see the blue sedan in the background of several shots. Private investigator. My lawyer objects, calling it harassment. The judge agrees, but allows them to be entered as evidence. Tina looks at me, desperation in her eyes. Finally, the judge speaks. I see two parents who both love their child, but only one who has demonstrated a consistent, positive presence. Miss Kelly, your efforts are noted, but your instability, your recent absence, and your attempts to discredit Mr. Kelly without substantial evidence are concerning. Mr. Kelly, you are not without fault, but your progress is evident. I close my eyes, bracing. It is the order of this court that primary custody remains with Marcus Kelly. Miss Kelly will have supervised visitation, contingent on continued counseling. This matter is closed. Ellie bursts into tears. I pull her close. Even Tina, for all her icy resolve, seems relieved. Maybe the fight is over for now. Outside, the air is sharp and bright. Alex is waiting, grinning, and Miss Jensen gives us a rare smile. You did it, she says, and for the first time in years, I believe her. But the scars of the battle linger. Ellie clings to me in the car, not letting go, as if afraid the world will change again if she blinks. I promise her we're safe, that she's home. But in my heart, I know. Home is never just a place. It's the people who refuse to let go of you, even when you're at your worst. That night, as I tuck Ellie in, she asks, "Are you sure you're not going anywhere?" "Never," I whisper. "Not ever again." She closes her eyes, and for the first time in months, I see her smile in her sleep. I sit by her bed long after she's drifted off, watching the street outside, the quiet falling snow. The world is uncertain. There will always be another challenge, another test. But as long as I breathe, I will fight for this child. She is my redemption, and I am hers. If you'd told me 2 years ago that I'd be here standing at the kitchen window on a quiet Sunday morning, sunlight warming the floor, the scent of pancakes filling the house, Ellie humming as she draws at the table, I'd have laughed, maybe even gotten angry. I didn't believe in second chances then. Maybe I still don't, not in the way movies sell it. But I believe in work, in showing up, in never walking away from the people who matter. A month has passed since the judge's decision. Ellie and I are learning what peace feels like again. She sleeps through most nights. Her grades are steady. The house feels less like a test and more like a home. Sometimes, though, I see her staring out the window, twisting that old bracelet, lost in her own thoughts. Sometimes I catch myself listening for Tina's voice on the phone, waiting for the next shoe to drop. But things have changed. There are therapy appointments, but now Ellie looks forward to them. She comes home excited to show me a painting she made or a poem she wrote in group. Her therapist says she's resilient, that word they use for kids who've been through too much but still have light in them. I have my own routines. Work at the shop is steady. My brother Alex drops by every week, with groceries or just to watch the game. On Sundays, Miss Jensen sometimes visits. She says she likes to check up on us, but I know she enjoys Ellie's company as much as the free coffee. I keep up with my meetings, even when I don't feel like it. Sobriety isn't something you graduate from. Some nights the urge returns, a cold shadow at the door. But now I have reasons to say no. Now, if I falter, Ellie notices. And that's enough to keep me honest. Tina still calls, sometimes late, her voice thick with regret. She asks about Ellie, sometimes about me. We keep it civil. She started therapy herself, working through her anger and confusion. I hope, someday, Ellie can have two parents she can trust, even if one of them only from a distance. Spring comes slowly to Spokane. The river thaws. Daffodils sprout in the tired earth behind our apartment. Ellie convinces me to help her plant a row of wildflowers. We kneel in the mud, laughing, dirt caked under our fingernails, arguing about which color is best. She chooses purple. I say blue. We settle on both. After we finish, Ellie sits beside me, hugging her knees. Will it always be like this? She asks. I shake my head. Nothing stays the same forever, kiddo. But we get to choose what we build. She nods, considering. Will Mom come back? She'll always be your mom, I answer carefully. But you get to decide how close you want her. Ellie's eyes are older than her years. I want her to get better, like you did. I hope she does, I say, meaning it. That evening, Alex drops by with pizza. We eat on the porch, the three of us, talking about old movies, school, the little victories Ellie's art show, my first raise at the shop, Alex's new girlfriend. It feels like a family, strange and small, but ours. Later, after Alex leaves, Ellie and I sit together on the couch. She leans against me, head on my shoulder, silent for a long time. Dad? Yeah? Are you happy? It's such a simple question, but it stops me cold. Am I happy? I think about the fear that chased us for so long, the uncertainty, the nights I thought I'd fail her. I think about the scars we both carry, the ones nobody sees. But I also think about this moment my daughter safe beside me, the house quiet, the promise of another sunrise. I think about the laughter, the wildflowers, the hope that slowly, stubbornly, took root between us. I think I am, I say, surprised at the truth of it. Yeah, I really am. Ellie smiles, her eyes shining. Me too. The seasons turn. Summer comes, and with it, new routines. Ellie joins a local youth art group. I coach Little League, just the bench, but it feels good to cheer for other kids, to be part of something outside our private struggles. Sometimes, Tina comes to visit, supervised at first. The meetings are awkward, then easier. Ellie shows her drawings, talks about her friends, tells her about the wildflowers. I see Tina's pain and pride in equal measure. I forgive her, slowly, in pieces. Not for her sake, but for mine and for Ellie's. One evening, after Tina leaves, Ellie hugs me tightly. I know things were hard, but I'm glad you never gave up on me. I hug her back, fiercely. Never will. Fall brings new challenges school, changing friendships. The first time Ellie stays out a little too late. We argue. She slams doors. I ground her. We apologize. We move forward. Sometimes during the quiet nights, I still worry. But now, I know I can handle whatever comes. We both can. The wildflowers bloom every year now, a riot of blue and purple in the spring. Ellie says they're a reminder that something beautiful can grow out of messy earth. On the anniversary of the court hearing, Ellie and I visit the old apartment where everything began. We stand outside, staring up at the window where she once sat alone, waiting for me to come home. I feel the ache of regret, but it's softened by time and by the girl beside me, stronger than ever. Let's go, she says, taking my hand. Where to? Anywhere, she grins. Home. We walk away together. The past is always there, but it no longer defines us. As we cross the street, the sky is wide and blue. The future, uncertain as it is, feels possible. For the first time, I believe in hope. For the first time, I know I'm enough. And Ellie, daughter, my light is too.